українці і греки.
From simply hanging on.
Πατρίδα, ελευθερία, δημοκρατία. Μην σιωπήσετε. Ακολουθήστε το δρόμο της καρδιάς. Βοηθήστε όπως μπορεί ο καθένας τους Ουκρανούς.
Hello everyone, welcome to Patikapeon, the Greek-Ukrainian podcast. My name is Ilya. I'm very happy today to speak to a young Ukrainian PhD student, Viktor Kovalov. Viktor is a PhD student in Evolutionary Biology at the University of Zurich. He has studied in the Jagiellonian University of Poland as well as the Kharkiv National University in Ukraine. It's important to note that along his academic journey, he has collected various prestigious scholarships as well. So it's absolutely fantastic for us to have a young, bright Ukrainian academician to talk about both the war in general, but also the university community of Ukraine and how it has changed these past 2.5 years. Viktor, thank you so much. Thank you for your time. Could you please introduce yourself to us, just for us to know your profile a bit?
First of all, thank you for inviting me. It is a great pleasure to be on such excellent podcast. Yes, so Greek-Ukrainian relationship are long-lasting, and I hope this is another page of our connection. Yeah, hello everyone. My name is Viktor Kovalov. I live in Switzerland for almost 4 years. I came here to do my PhD. Before I was working in Ukraine, studying in Ukraine, working with bats, Chiroptera, and also did my master in Poland, in Kharkiv.
Perfect. And you come from Kharkiv?
Yeah, I was born in Kharkiv. Then I spent 2-3 years not in Kharkiv with my parents, and then they came back. And yes, until the moment I moved to Poland, I lived in Kharkiv. And it was 24 years, 23 years, yeah, something like this.
Perfect. So let's dive into the thick of it very quickly. So I'm wondering, as a young Ukrainian from Kharkiv, why do you think this invasion happened, and what does this event mean to you?
I mean, it is quite a broad question, several levels, I would say. One,
let's deep dive.
Yeah, I mean, maybe not in the order of the importance or, let's say, easiness to understand. One of the reason, for sure, it is imperial behavior of Russia. So they still think that Ukraine doesn't exist, or actually they think that Ukraine does exist, but they perceive Ukraine a bit differently as Ukrainians perceive, and they cannot allow themselves to accept that their vision of Ukraine is not the same as vision of Ukraine from Ukrainian perspective. It is how I see it. Another layer is that they tried to control Ukraine since 2014, but also before with pro-Russian president, with pro-Russian government, etc., etc. They failed at some stage. And I would say that, yes, it was another reason why they decided to physically control Ukraine. Maybe not completely physically, because if you followed this news at the very beginning of the big-scale invasion, you may have seen that there were not only a regular army, but also internal army, so-called militia. So these people who should control people masses, not to fight with Ukrainian army. So the original plan was to invade fastly, to try to make so-called blitzkrieg. So yeah, they tried to do this, they failed, but among those people who were in all these columns invading Ukraine were not only militaries, not only army, but also these internal police forces, let's say. I don't know how to properly name it, but you got it, to control protests, to control riots, etc., etc. Another reason is that over the last 8 years, Ukraine did not invest as much as would needed to defend. It was quite obvious, honestly. Everyone knew about this. Still, there were some improvements, a lot of improvements, but a lot of mistakes, a lot of errors either were made or something wasn't done. And it was another reason why Russians decided to invade physically, because still they could implement some pro-Russian politicians quite in a peaceful way. Kind of peaceful way. Yeah, I make quotation marks now. Yeah, so there are many reasons. Yeah, for sure. One of the reasons is that some sort of philosophical, in a way, that Russia sees this area, this territory, as the part of Russian Empire, and they think that they can have right to control it. But yeah, we can use history to provide arguments to any of the sides. But the reality that still, despite all the problems we have in Ukraine, we do have already Ukrainian political nation. Maybe not 100% people feel themselves as Ukrainians in Ukraine, but still it is a fact that there are people who treat themselves as Ukrainians. Without going into details, what does it mean? But still, it is a reality, and Russia doesn't accept this reality.
It blows my mind that they don't accept this reality and they are willing to go to full-scale war. I mean, how do they think?
There is a saying in Ukraine, I can say it in Ukrainian, «Дякую Боже, що не москаль». In English, it can be translated vaguely as «Thanks God, I'm not a Russian». Thanks God, I'm not a Russian. I don't know how they think and why they think in such a way. We can speculate. But yeah, historically, they are used to occupy lands, occupy areas in a violent way. And actually, it's not only Russians who did it historically. But they didn't change, and they do not accept these ideas of human rights, ideas that life is quite important. And it does mean whether you treat people in a good or in a bad way. They do not accept this. So we can go deeper and deeper, trying to speculate. Yeah, in short, I don't know why they do not accept it. Partially also because it is their ideology, and the very existence of Russia is based on Ukrainian part.
Can you delve into that? Can you tell us a bit more about that ideology and how the Ukrainian nation connects with the foundations of the Russian state?
Yeah, what I'm going to tell you now is that how they perceive it. It doesn't mean that it is true. It is ideology, so it cannot be true. It can be either you believe it or not. Back in 17th century, when some Ukrainian lands became under Russian or Moscovian government, Moscovian territory. I don't know. It was not kingdom. It was so-called tsardom, when there was a tsar in Moscovia. So it was quite important for them to create some sort of ideology trying to lure Ukrainian people to be a part of this Moscovian tsardom, later Russian Empire. And there were some philosophers, there were some church people who invented this idea of so-called brotherhood between Ukrainians and Russians, that actually Russia is a descendant of Kiev and Rus. It's not so true. There are some connections, but as, I don't know, like Germans may have connections with Brits because they are German tribes. And what is funny, or quite ironically, is that one of the main ideologists of Kiev as a center of Russian Empire, or quite important city of Russian Empire, is actually Kievan churchman. So he was a descent from Kiev. He studied in Kiev Mohyla Academy, and then he moved to Moscow and developed such an idea just for Ukrainian, that time, intellectual people to be integrated into Moscovian elite circle. And a long time ago it happened, but still this is quite important myth in Russian ideology. And they cannot give it up because it was also a part how Russia became European country. Because before it was kind of Asian still. Again, I'm telling you now not proper historical facts. I'm trying to show you the general picture how it happened. And yeah, so since then they perceive themselves as Europeans, partially because they integrated Ukrainian part 300 years ago.
Okay. I mean, it's interesting to delve into the Ukrainian history and how this connects to Russia. On the one hand, you had the Kievan Rus, and you had some faraway territories in Suzdal, modern-day Moscow, who, after the Mongol conquest, became the most prominent ones because Kiev was sacked. And then they developed this state structure that grew more powerful and basically dominated the region and became the Russian Empire. It's interesting how this happened and how they took legitimacy from the Kievan Rus. So then this ideology, from what I understand, unites both the Ukrainians and the Belarusians with the Russians, and this is their national myth that they say. Now they see that Ukraine has, for some reason, wanted to join the EU or just leave this scheme, and they can't accept it, as you say. I'm wondering, what happened to the Ukrainians? And they wanted independence and they wanted to be part of the European Union. I mean, some years ago, it was the Soviet Union with so many more states. So what actually happened? Did the Ukrainians maybe see how the Poles, how the Balts lived? Can you walk us through this thought process of Ukrainians?
Okay, I cannot tell you why exactly Ukrainians wanted to become independent in 90s, yes, beginning of 90s, because I was born in 94 already in independent Ukraine. Yeah, another comment, yeah, just to come back to what you said, I don't know when Belarusians actually appeared in these three brother nations. I don't know when it happened. I know why Ukrainians and Russians were thought to be brother nations. Because actually we spent quite a long time together with Lithuanians and Polish people in second, I don't know what's English for this actually, like Rzeczpospolita, first Polish kingdom.
The Commonwealth.
Yeah, thank you. Commonwealth, Polish, Lithuanian Commonwealth. It happened a bit later, but still. Coming back to this idea why Ukrainians decided to be independent, I would say partially it's economical reason. Because in 90s, end of 80s, there was quite powerful propaganda that Ukraine is quite a rich state, quite a rich republic in the USSR. And that's why if we don't send money to the center, to Moscow, we're going to keep this money here and everyone will profit from this, out of this. Yeah, I also think that quite important it was this Ukrainian idea of Ukrainian being independent, despite all the problems, despite all the repressions, sending people to Siberia, killing them, etc., etc. There were still some people who preserved this idea of Ukraine being independent. For some, as I said, it was economical reasons. For some, ideological reasons. For some people, maybe nothing changed, I would say. So I don't know actually why exactly people decided to leave USSR, regular people, because elites, they were really interested in ruling on their own, so without Moscovian people. So it was kind of understandable for them, mostly economical reasons, I would say.
So the Ukrainian elites were more nationalist or patriotic. They wanted to have their own state. They were more in favor than regular people.
I would say I don't know, like, were they patriotic or national driven? Yeah, I still think so, that for some of them it was mostly economical reasons, in a way that we can keep more money, not sending them back to Moscow. For some, yes, I can imagine that some political elites were driven purely by patriotic reasons, but not all of them. Because even at the very beginning of the independent Ukrainian state, we had more than half people working in governmental organizations, institutions from Soviet Union, which is also understandable because we didn't have independent somewhere in Europe, as for example happened with Poland. We didn't have a lot of intellectual people, intelligentsia, or political class developing not in Ukraine but thinking about Ukraine. It didn't happen a lot with Ukraine, so that's why most of the elite were still from Soviet Union.
Okay. So this process, you say, was primarily driven for economic gain. I'm only wondering, did that change a bit during the Orange Revolution in 2004, during the Maidan Revolution in 2014? Did the thinking change in Ukrainians on why and if they should be independent?
I say that it was mostly economical, but I'm trying to say that it is mostly for governing people, not for regular people. Regular people, I can assume that really like the idea of Ukraine being independent. And as I can judge now, in 2004, with so-called Orange Revolution, it was about the trigger was not really honest voting. So people voted and they expressed their wish for Yushchenko to be a president. But someone decided that no, we're gonna make Yanukovych a president. And this very fact of not really honest, not really open results, or I don't know, counting votes or whatever. So someone manipulated people's decision and it was the main trigger. I cannot say that it is something about patriotism or something else. It's mostly about being about fairness, that we can live in democratic country. But again, I was not quite old enough to remember all this stuff. It is something that I already read afterwards. So I don't know, like some time ago. I cannot say I witnessed a lot during the Orange Revolution.
Okay, cool, interesting.
I cannot say for most of the people, and I do understand that the idea of Ukraine appeared not 30 years ago. The idea of Ukraine was still alive long time ago, because after, if we come back again to Kiev and Rus, you mentioned that some part of Kiev and Rus in Suzdal were a bit more prominent, but it's also not true, because Kiev, despite also the fact that it was captured for a short period of time, there were some Mongolians on Ukrainian territory. But afterwards, like since 13th century, we were part of either Lithuanian country or some sort of political organization, but then we were quite important part of Polish kingdom as well, Polish-Lithuanian Commonwealth. There are two countries, but actually Ukrainian lands, and they were called Ruski lands, Ruski people, they were important part, and they were developing political institutions as well. And it was rather classic democratic already at that period of time, because the government was elected by people. Yes, it was limited number of people who had ability to vote, but still such ideas were developing in Ukraine back in 15th century, 16th century, so quite long time ago.
Okay, so there you have Ukrainians who want to figure their own course in life, decide for their own destiny for multiple reasons, and basically that I assume means European Union at least, and then Russia did not accept that, and then you have the first smaller invasion and then the full-scale invasion. Why did they think that Ukraine would just surrender so easily? I mean, everybody at that time in February 22 thought that the Russian army is super powerful, the Ukrainian army is not that much, but then you see all the people, having this urge to go and just not accept that. Why did they miscalculate that bad? What were they thinking then?
As I would say, several reasons. One reason is Ukrainian corruption, in a way that Russia spent billions of dollars in Ukraine to establish pro-Russian local governments. Pro-Russian politicians in every city, especially in Russian-speaking cities, political groups, political parties, media, etc., etc. But Ukrainian corruptions worked here for Ukraine, and in most cases, this money was just stolen. So Russia didn't succeed to implement a lot of spies locally in Ukraine. And that's why when Russians asked, so, okay, what is the situation, how people think, whether they like Russia or not, local representatives, they were just lying. Yes, everything is going to be okay. You can invade. Nothing happened. People will accept you with flowers and bread. Yeah. I mean, I would say that it is partially true, because I heard how much Russia spent on Ukrainian pro-Russian everything, political parties, media, social media, representatives, etc., etc. But also I see how much these people earned, and I would assume, it's not my thought, that most of the money was stolen. So Russia paid people in Ukraine to establish pro-Russian narratives, but most of the money were just put in their pocket, not used in a, as Russia would say, proper way. Another reason is, I would say, that Western Slavic studies, they were biased towards Russia, and they believed mostly what Russia say, not what really happens in Ukraine, in Baltic countries, in, like Kazakhstan. So still Western Slavic or East European studies, they were, at least some time ago, were centered around Russia. They tended to believe what Russia says, not what Kyiv says. So that's partially why we saw all these narrations from the US, from the UK, from other European countries that you're going to fail in 1 week. It didn't happen, partially because the intelligence didn't work well as well. As I said, partially because they believed only Russian sources, not Ukrainian sources.
There was this term, Russophone. You basically speak Russian, so you should have more pro-Russian views. You should see Russia and maybe you want to be part of it. It seems though as this term was basically an oversold term of Russian propaganda. Coming from Kharkiv, how do we describe a Russophone speaking person? Because I assume that it was also part of the calculation. Part of the propaganda said, oh, we're going to liberate Russian speaking people. So tell us about them.
Okay, living in Kharkiv, speaking Russian, and sometimes watching Russian news, I was surprised that so many people believe in this news. Living in Kharkiv city, doing some stuff, still speaking Russian, I didn't feel myself as Russian. I perceived myself first as Ukrainian, and
So you're also Russophone.
I mean, yeah, if we say francophone, so yeah, my first language is Russian, yes. Yeah, so that's why it is really interesting for me what is exactly the reason why people believe in this propaganda, because, I mean, with my friends, when we studied in Kharkiv University, with other people, when we saw this Russian propaganda, we treated it as like some bullshit and we just made jokes about it. So we didn't know how people actually can believe, can trust in this, because it's total bullshit. Despite the fact that we were Russian speaking and they intended to liberate us, but we didn't want to be liberated. We were okay.
I've heard it's basically like saying that the Irish people are English speaking, so maybe Great Britain wants to take over.
I don't know, like German can liberate some Swiss people as well.
Yeah, true. So there was this fog in their thoughts. They believed in their own propaganda with a so-called Russian-speaking whatever.
I mean, we should admit that actually it was quite successful propaganda, I would say, because in Kharkiv, even now, unfortunately, there are pro-Russian people, open pro-Russian people, I would say. It is hard, and it is quite complicated. And honestly, I don't know what to do with these people. But on the other side, yes, I know a lot of people who were not with a friendly behavior towards Russian, but at least, there are Russians like 40 kilometers and it is Russia. So there were no bad intention towards Russia in most cases in Kharkiv, for example. And yes, still many people do have family connection. But after February 24 in 2022, yes, despite all this connection, despite all these previous not bad intentions, not bad feelings, most of the people now hate Russians, and it is absolutely understandable. And now, especially now, I don't know how it is possible, even for Russian-speaking Ukrainians nowadays, to have some feelings towards Russia. So,
and this applies throughout the south and east of Ukraine, right? So you had Russian-speaking people who had just neutral feelings towards Russia, maybe even positive, but right now it has gone into severe negative feelings.
Yes.
Okay. So you have that fog in their mind, in their decision-making's mind. You have the so-called Russian-speaking people. You have Ukrainian corruption, and then here we are. I want to ask you now about a different topic, about the university community in Ukraine. So you as an academician, you have studied in Ukrainian universities. I guess you have some contact over there. And I would like you to walk us through the university community landscape in Ukraine in the past. Could you tell us, which were famous universities, famous departments, which cities were considered student cities, Kharkiv, for example, what research was being done? Could you just tell us a little bit about this? Maybe even how you entered the Ukrainian universities. Did you have private, state ones? Just a general overview.
Yeah, I mean, when I was entering Ukrainian university, we do have mostly not private, but financed by Ukrainian government. So to enter the university, actually, I don't know. I don't know exactly how it's done now. During the war, there were some changes. But before, actually, people need to pass some exams. It is a general exam established by Ministry of Education. And for example, if you go to biology, you need to have biology, math, and chemistry in your set of exams you need to pass. And based on your results, you apply for a place in several universities, and then there are some ratings. It was some time ago like this. Now there are some other changes. There is no this general externally governed test. There are some other ways to evaluate people's knowledge. I'm not familiar with these tests now. But some time ago, Kharkiv were supposed to be student city because a lot of universities, a lot of institutions, some research institutions, and actually when I was studying in Poland, some year I came back to spend some weeks in Ukraine, in Kharkiv, and I realized that Kharkiv in 2019 or something like this was a bit more international than Krakow, in a way that in Kharkiv we had much more international students, especially from Middle East, from Asia, from Africa, so quite international vibes, I would say. I would name a few universities in Kharkiv. First of all, it is a classic university, Kharkiv National University, where you have everything like in any classic university, from medicine up to astrophysics, I don't know, like psychology, law studies, etc., sociology. And I was studying biology there. There are some specific universities that are concentrate, on a specific area. For example, aeronautics, for example, Academy of Physical Education, so where Olympic champions are trained. So quite different. Medical university also, like high school education university, so quite many of them.
Did you have any famous polytechnic maybe in Kyiv,
Yes.
in Lviv, or maybe literature in Odessa, stuff like that, maybe programming in Vinnytsia?
So there are several polytechnical schools in Kyiv, in Kharkiv, in Lviv. It is what I know. In Odessa, there is also classic university with also quite nice biological faculty in Odessa, in Kyiv, in Lviv. You mentioned this literature. I don't know, actually. I'm not so aware of it. What else? There is one school. It's called Kyiv School of Economy. This is, I believe, a private one, a private university. And they are quite good in incorporating different practical studies. So they're really nice in combining theoretical lectures, seminars with some practical activities. I also know, so quite recent, in Lviv, there is a Ukrainian Catholic university. It is also a private or partially funded by Catholic Church, I expect. And there, apart from philosophical and theological studies, you can also find something related to AI, something related to IT.
What about Dnipro and Zaporozhye? From some information I've seen, these are quite rich, prominent regions of Ukraine.
I know that in Dnipro, they had, or maybe still have, they still do have quite powerful school of spacecraft building. I even followed for some time a student organization from Dnipro University, and they were taking part in these competitions from NASA, build a rocket, whatever, this kind of stuff. So there was such a school there, at least was, maybe still is. In Zaporizhia, there is a Zaporizhia University, but I didn't hear a lot of good stuff about this university, I would say. So unfortunately, I would say that educational system is on a declining trend nowadays, mostly due to the war, but also these problems appeared quite a long time ago. So the war is another trigger why it's getting worse and worse, but it's not the main one.
Then could you tell us then how this changes? Not necessarily because of the war, but also just after the war, we saw a lot of viral photos, with academics making video lectures from the trenches, or, do you have a lack of personnel, I can imagine, or maybe do lessons happen maybe in bunkers, as in a lot of schools? How does this change?
I would say that it depends on the region. Because, for example, in Kharkiv region, it is really dangerous and people do study online mostly in Kharkiv region, for example, because it's quite close to a front line and it's close to Russia, because any rocket that's sent to, any missile that's sent to Ukraine, it can reach Kharkiv within 1 minute. It is a bit better situation somewhere on western part of Ukraine, like Lviv region or Transcarpathian region, where people can study offline, in person, because they have a bit more time if something happens. But yes, in Kharkiv, there are some plans to build a few schools underground, and actually one of them is kind of progressed. I don't know, like 70-80% is done. So basically it's going to be school underground. Yes, in other plans to implement. So in Kharkiv, it's kind of a big city. We do have subway system, and there are some classes happening underground, but in a subway. Some rooms were renovated and repurposed to have people, to have young people studying there.
Apart from university, does this also happen for high school, primary school?
Yeah, actually, what I said, it happens for primary school. So for young students, for, I don't know, like up to 15, 18. But the university, unfortunately, at least the main university where I graduated from, it doesn't have in-person classes now.
Yeah. And where do you think this is heading to? How does the situation change?
It depends. It really depends on many factors. First, it depends not only on the educational system, it depends on number of anti-missile weaponry we have to close our sky, in Kharkiv at least. It depends on how much money is going to be invested in education in Kharkiv. Whether we can secure, I'm talking now about Kharkiv region, whether we're gonna secure Kharkiv region or not, because education is extremely important, but unfortunately it's not the first priority for some people. And I also can understand why. So that's why the future of education, high school, primary school, etc., the future of science in Kharkiv as well depends on military success and whether we're gonna be able to defend our sky. Unfortunately, it depends not only on this, but also on the will of people who work in universities. And sometimes this will is not pro-educational, let's say. So that's why I would say that I'm pessimistic about future of Kharkiv universities, honestly. But I will be surprised if I'm wrong. I will be really happy if I'm wrong.
Yeah. So, what you said, I found it very interesting. You talked about international students. In Greece, we had an extremely small amount of international students. There was just a law passed very few years ago so that more and more international students could come. This was considered a bit revolutionary. In Greece we have state universities only. Private universities are banned by constitution. And now we see the fruits of having an open university to the world. So I'm curious to know, you mentioned that Kharkiv universities were very open and had a lot of students from abroad. Can I ask you, not only in Kharkiv, but throughout Ukraine, did you have many international students? Where did they come from? Did they need to pay a fee? Would it be difficult to enter a university? Were international students only in state universities or also in private ones? Was the quality of the education high? Because in Greece, we would think, this person goes to Bulgaria, Romania, or Ukraine to study medicine just to buy a diploma, not to actually learn. So what was the quality? How many international students you had? Where from? What fee did they pay?
I would say that because we do have mostly state universities, I would say that people came to state universities mostly. Just statistically speaking, I don't know, like 50 universities are state and only like 5, 10 private. So more people out of Ukraine went to state universities. And yes, one of them is a medical university in Kharkiv. It is quite powerful. Some people went to university, Kharkiv University, classic one. Also, some people would go to Kharkiv Polytechnical School. It is, I would say, 3 biggest universities, and probably most of the people studied there. Some of them may be also in aviation university, because I met some people studying how to build planes. And they mentioned that, it is quite good. So I'll study here and then I come back. Some African country, I don't remember which one. I go back and I will do some business because it is quite developing field in that country, in his home country. But I also agree with you to some extent that unfortunately, and it's coming back to the question whether it's hard to enter the university in Ukraine. It depends. It depends how much money you have.
So if you're an international student, you need to pay to go to the state Ukrainian university.
Actually, yes. Actually, education for people from abroad is not free. So you need to pay. I mean, relatively now, I think it is some time ago.
Is that fee high? Let's say a number.
It was, for example, 2016, 2017, for a master program, it was around 1K per either semester or year. So $1 to $2K per year.
Pretty cheap.
Yes. I don't know. I believe it's not. But the problem is that, the quality wasn't increasing. And in most cases, why I say depends on how much money you have. In most cases, these diploma are not for knowledge, just to have still recognizable diploma. But the cost fee was increasing gradually year by year, but the quality was not increasing. Opposite, it was kind of getting worse and worse. So that's why there were already some tendency that kind of less and less people came to Ukraine to study.
And how much was that portion of international students? Was it 1-2%? Was it 20, 30, 40%?
I have no exact numbers, but just by feelings, I would say 5-10. Yes.
Wow, that's
I mean,
that's a
in
big number.
Ukraine, in total. I may be extremely wrong, judging only by Kharkiv student society, but I would say up to 10%. Mostly African countries, Central Asia, Middle East, these regions.
Interesting, very interesting. Question, just out of curiosity, did you also have occupations? Did the Ukrainian students protest against policies and maybe they occupied some buildings? Did you have such stuff that you see in American universities sometimes or in French ones?
I would say no, actually. I'm not sure. I was into politics some time ago, so that's why I didn't follow this. But I would say no. Maybe some small protests. A lot of students participated in 2014 Maidan protests, Maidan revolution. A lot of students. Also, I heard, this urban myth, urban legends that our chemical department prepared Molotov cocktails for protesters. But not about protesting in terms of defending student rights. Not so many, at least I haven't heard. In Kharkiv University. In other universities, yes, I heard that students protest, that students demand something, and they did have more established feel of studentness. I don't know. Yeah.
You mentioned the Maidan in 2014. So all these activities organized by the students happened because of Maidan. They were basically pro-Maidan protests.
Yes, so some students participated in Maidan independently on other problems. So it was their decision. Some students participated, took part in all these processions or in protests or also in fighting in Kyiv. And one my group mate, he was shot, not lethally, fortunately, but yes, he was shot on Kyiv streets when Berkut was shooting people. So he got 2 bullets in his shoulder.
Wow.
Yes.
But he survived.
Yeah, he survived. Yes, he survived. Yes. And actually, at least what I heard some time ago, he's serving in Ukrainian army now. I would say that there was a tendency of increased awareness of political problems or local problems after the Maidan in 2014. So I would say yes, partially it helped students to be more active. Mostly, I would say in Kyiv, and maybe not so much in Kharkiv.
Super. So, perfect. So, we talked about the war and why it happened, what does it mean, why did the Russians think that they could just occupy Ukraine. We talked about the university community landscape in the past, but also currently and how it changes. Going back to the big event, the big war, and from a Greek point of view, what is your impression of Greece's involvement in helping or not Ukraine?
I should say I heard not so much, not a lot. One thing that I heard is back in 2022, in May, when Azovstal was occupied, was surrendered. Actually, not even Azov, in general, when there were quite intense fighting in Mariupol. Historically, Mariupol is one of the centers of Greek diaspora in Ukraine. And that's why I heard that our Ukrainian government, Ukrainian politicians asked Greek politicians to help in evacuation of Mariupol people, because Mariupol was up to 500,000 people and Greek population at least several thousand for sure in Mariupol. It is one humanitarian involvement, what I heard about. Another is sometimes I also hear that our president, Volodymyr Zelensky, he either had a phone conversation or met in person with some Greek representatives here, talking about some at least humanitarian aid, but also about military support. So I cannot give you a lot of details, but yeah, I know that there is there. Another aspect, Greece is part of EU, European Union, and all the activities from European Union should be agreed with all the states. And if we have some positive results from European Union, it means that Greece is involved in such a way. So I think that there is a support. Maybe I don't know it, but yeah.
Okay, so you haven't heard that much. You have heard about Mariupol, and also from a support standpoint, Greece is in the EU, so it also supports partly.
Yes.
I want to ask you, if you had to group Greece in terms of support for Ukraine, would you put it in the countries like Poland, Estonia, Latvia? Would you put it maybe in other countries like Italy or Spain, or would you put it in the same category as Hungary maybe? Where in your mind would Greece sit?
I would develop such a system like neutral, proactive, not active, and positive, negative. In terms of Poland, it is proactive, positive, at least some time ago. Baltic countries also. In terms of Greece, I would say neutral, positive. So maybe not so proactive, not so many activities, but at least on a governmental level, I haven't heard anything that is not pro-Ukrainian. Yeah, at least how I see it. So yeah, neutral in terms of not being proactive, but positive in terms of rather pro-Ukrainian, or at least in some aspects.
Perfect. And one last thing. I remember we talked on the phone about it. Could you tell us that trivia for culture geeks about how the Greek Orthodox cultural influence in the Kharkiv region led to an increase of a specific animal breed?
Yeah, so Ukrainian lands accepted Orthodoxy in 989, more than 1,000 years ago. And historically it was from Byzantium Empire, from Eastern Rome Empire, yes. But I don't know why in our old scripts it's called Greek religion, despite the fact that Greece wasn't already at that time as a separate country. So Ukraine became orthodoxal, and we developed this type of Christianity, branch of Christianity. And in Kharkiv region, some time ago, we had several kind of isolated monasteries. And one of the monastery remainings of one of the monastery now in quite old forest. This forest 400-500 years old, oak forest. And we, as a biologist, Homilsha. It is Homilsha National Park. There is one old forest, Homilsha Forest, that is quite old, oak forest, and Kharkiv University has a biological station in this forest, just for students to become aware of the beauty of Ukrainian nature, and also do some practical studies, field courses. Yeah, and when we were there, so we heard about these remnants of Orthodoxal monastery. But some time ago, I was working with land snails, and I heard that apparently one of the most famous and most abundant land snail, a big, how it's called? I know Latin name, Helix pomatia. You can Google Helix pomatia. I don't know English name for this snail. And we are so used to this snail, but apparently it's not native for Kharkiv region, despite huge number of this snail everywhere. But it turned out that it was brought to this forest originally by Orthodoxal monks, because in Orthodoxy you do have these fasting periods. But the Bible says that you cannot eat meat, and snails are not apparently animals for Orthodox people. So that's why they were allowed to breed them, to raid them and eat. And they escaped, these snails, apparently from these monasteries and dispersed in eastern part of Ukraine.
And they're still there.
Yeah, sure, yeah, a lot.
Perfect. Viktor, thank you so much. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you. Thank you for inviting. I hope you learned a little about Ukraine today. Maybe not a lot, but still something. I just want to say probably the last phrase from my side. Thank you for inviting. I think it is quite important stuff what you're doing here. And I wish you all the best with your podcast. All the audience, please subscribe, comment, either provide 5 stars or a thumb up, and enjoy other episodes of this excellent podcast.